Welcome back, you night owls. Tonight we drift into a realm where truth wears gowns, swords hang behind silken curtains, and destiny slips on glass slippers, not for glamour, but for survival. Imagine a land where the air smells faintly of honeyed tea and ironed velvet, where palace corridors stretch like whispering rivers of marble, and the bells of court never sleep. But beneath all that pomp and splendour something stirs, a child born not quite as expected, and certainly not as fate intended. They say legends are carved from stone and fire. This one, however, is stitched together with taffeta, prophecy, and an identity the world simply wasn't ready for. Oh, and fair warning, they probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I promise to read every single one while sipping my sleepy time tea. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It begins with a problem, as most stories of royalty do, a king without an heir. King Halvian of Verdansia is not a man who accepts fate. His banners hang in every village square, his name sung after every harvest, his battles carved into mountain stone. Yet none of it will matter if the bloodline ends with him. His first wife, a mild-mannered duchess with a voice like a falling leaf, bore him stillborn daughters. The court called it tragedy. The midwives whispered of curses. Years passed. His second wife, a fierce Highlander with freckles like cinnamon dust, survived childbirth but died not long after. Her son, born under the third moon, was swaddled in linen embroidered with runes of protection. Still, silence fell across the court. The royal seer had vanished days before the birth, leaving only a note and a bundle of scrolls behind. The note read, "The boy must become a princess, or the kingdom dies." Predictably, this sent the king into a spiral of furious pacing, breaking goblets against marble and whispering threats to advisers who dared suggest he remarry again. The prophecy was brought before the inner circle, a cloister of the kingdom's oldest minds, including a sleepy-eyed scholar named Myrdo, who claimed the scrolls were older than even Verdansia itself. "This isn't just mysticism," Myrdo croaked through biscuit crumbs. "It's a riddle about roles, about what the kingdom needs, not just who." The debate flared. Some believed the scrolls were a trap, planted by rival kingdoms to confuse succession. Others whispered of divine wisdom. One advisor, Lady Renessa, leaned closer to the flame. "Then raise the boy as a princess," she said. "Let the world see lace, not legacy." And so, from that night forth, the plan took form. A new name was given, Princess Thea, the name of a long-lost goddess. The kingdom cheered. A miracle daughter, born after so many tragedies. Meanwhile, the king looked on with a smile crafted from careful lies. Deep down, he wondered if he'd already begun the kingdom's unravelling. In the nursery tower, gold-panelled and scented always of lavender, the baby grew. Nannies dressed her in soft gowns of sky blue and pearl pink. Dolls lined the bassinet, each one stitched by hand with symbols of fertility and strength. To most, she was perfect. Bright-eyed, unusually quiet, watching everyone with curious calm. As the child grew into toddling years, the challenge deepened. Her mannerisms weren't dainty. She preferred to dismantle her tea sets and stack them like fortresses. She ignored embroidery hoops in favour of twine and beetles. Her favourite toy was a bronze carving of a dragon, snatched from a court sculpture. Still, the deception continued. Royal balls were held in her honour. Portraits painted in glimmering pastels showed her smiling in lace collars, her hair bound in gold thread. The kingdom fell in love. They adored their peculiar little princess. She was different, they'd say. Strong-minded. The queen in waiting. Behind closed doors, things grew more complicated. One particularly rainy morning, Thea, now 7, asked her tutor a question that froze the room. "Why can't a girl be a knight?" she asked, hands on hips, rain thudding against the tall window. The tutor chuckled nervously. "Because it's always been so, my lady." "But I feel like I could be," she replied, deadpan. "Like I already am." The tutor said nothing more. That afternoon, he was quietly dismissed and replaced by an older, sterner woman named Madame Silfrin, who emphasised needlework and princessly composure. but the question had already planted its seed, curling tendrils through Tyr's thoughts. One spring the king took her riding across the southern meadows. The sun was kind that day, dappling the grass like liquid gold. As they stopped for a rest beneath the plum trees, Halvian studied his child. There was something about the way she sat, perched on a stone, chin high, gaze steady, that echoed memories of his own boyhood. He almost called her by the wrong name. "You're quiet today," he muttered. "I'm thinking," she said, "about what it means to lie." The king's lips twitched. Sometimes lying keeps people safe, or keeps them confused. He said no more. That night, as torches flickered in the palace windows, he summoned his trusted knight, Sir Calron, a man whose beard was more rumour than hair. "Train her," the king ordered. "In secret, teach her steel." And so, when the castle slept, Princess Thea disappeared into the armoury cellars, tucked between barrels of oil and spider-webbed spears. There, Sir Calron taught her to hold a blade, to move with intention, to find power in stance and stillness. "Strength doesn't belong to boys," he whispered. "It belongs to those who claim it." The duality became her life. By day she sipped tea and learned courtly hand-waving. By night she sparred until her arms ached. Her wardrobe hid bruises beneath velvet sleeves. Her smile at feasts hid a storm of questions. And always that single phrase from the prophecy clanged in her ears like a bell. The boy must become a princess. She wasn't sure what that meant anymore. Sometimes she'd stare at herself in the mirror, tilting her head. Who am I if I'm both, or neither? One late autumn evening, as fire crackled in the hearth and frost painted the windows, she found herself in the old library. Scrolls lay open across the floor, maps of the stars, books with spines so old they crumbled to the touch. In one tome she read of a forgotten Vedantian festival, the rite of the shape-changer, a sacred ceremony where a chosen child would take on a new role to bring balance to the kingdom. It had been banned centuries ago. She touched the page, eyes wide. What if the prophecy wasn't about disguising who she was, but revealing what the kingdom needed her to become? Footsteps echoed outside the chamber. She snapped the book shut and melted into the shadows. As the snow began to fall that year, so too did the layers of certainty that had wrapped her life. Something was coming, not just for her, but for all of Vedantia. The chill of winter sharpens everything, especially secrets. In Vedantia, the season paints the rooftops with powdered sugar, turns palace fountains into crystal sculptures, and drives even the boldest children indoors. But within the fortress of stone and glass, something far more ancient than frost begins to stir. The prophecy, now whispered more often and with greater urgency. Princess Thea, nearing her 12th year, is no longer the wide-eyed child who once mistook a dagger for a letter opener. She moves differently now, with a grace that unsettles even the seasoned guards. Her swordplay has grown precise, her questions sharper still. Yet no one dares speak of her past, of the name she was born with. The roles assigned before breath even filled her lungs. Behind layers of silk, two lives continue to braid uneasily together. There's the poised royal, learning to lead with words dipped in honey, and the hidden student of war, learning when to strike with words of iron. The tension of this double life frays silently until it finally finds release, not in battle or rebellion, but in something far stranger, the discovery of the hidden prophecy in its full, unedited form. It begins with an accidental fire. Well, technically a misjudged torch placement near an old tapestry. The flames are caught early, no injuries, just a ruined bit of Vedantian embroidery and one very flustered page boy. But the fire uncovers what's been hidden behind the wall, a sealed alcove, its stone blackened but intact. Inside, resting atop a pedestal of obsidian, lies a bundle of scrolls bound in red silk. Thea is summoned by the king himself. His face is drawn tighter than usual, shadows resting beneath his eyes. The scrolls are unwrapped in front of her and several advisors. The chamber smells of burnt parchment and bitter wine. Murdo, the biscuit-stained scholar, reads aloud. The full prophecy, it turns out, is not a sentence. It's a riddle layered with metaphors, contradictions, and eerie specifics. It speaks of a child born with the light of 2 stars, of robes and blades intertwined, and of a crown that will not sit unless worn sideways. Historians still argue whether that last line refers to gender, leadership, or an actual asymmetrical crown once worn by a mad king. More importantly, the scrolls make one thing uncomfortably clear. The child's transformation is not just necessary for political optics, it is tied to the very survival of the kingdom. How, exactly, is maddeningly vague. But there are hints, references to a crumbling border, to a shadow kingdom rising if the heir is not seen as both ruler and ruled, princess and protector, beloved and feared. Some believe this to mean an impending war with the northern tribes. Others mutter about old magic deep beneath the capital. A few suggest that perhaps the kingdom itself, its geography, even its weather, is reacting to the confusion of succession. That idea is dismissed, of course, but not entirely. The next few weeks become a blur of activity. The court buzzes like a disturbed hive. Nobles whisper behind embroidered fans, tailors are summoned for emergency fittings, and Thea is placed under even closer watch, not because they distrust her, but because they fear what the truth might unleash. She's not surprised, not anymore. In the quiet hours of the night, she lies awake beneath a canopy of moonlight and imagines what it would be like to step into one identity completely. To shed the mask, or to finally wear it fully, unapologetically. But she's not ready. That's when the dreams begin. At first they're simple, reflections of her day. A misstep in dance class becomes a tumble into a ravine. A missed parry becomes a blade to the chest. But slowly they evolve. In one, she stands in front of a crowd, neither dressed in gowns nor armour, but wrapped in starlight, holding out her arms as the sky itself bows to her. In another, she's walking through the palace halls, but her reflection in every mirror wears a different face. Boy, girl, both, neither, and whispers, choose. She tells no one. Dreams, after all, are easy to dismiss, except for the day they begin coming true. One afternoon, while taking her daily stroll through the Eastern Gardens, a practice designed to keep up appearances for the public, she hears the sound of wings overhead. Not unusual, except these aren't birds. They're too fast, too loud. She looks up just in time to see a dark shape streak past the sun. A metal hawk, spycraft, an automaton from the north. She rushes back inside, escorted by 6 guards, a heart pounding. Within hours, reports confirm it. The spy device carried high-resolution etchings of her face, her movements, even the tattoo on her shoulder blade, the royal crest hidden beneath her gowns. Verdancia's enemies now know something's not quite right about their princess. The king convenes an emergency council. Voices clash like cymbals. Should they confess the truth before the rumours turn venomous? Should they double down on the illusion? One advisor suggests marrying Thea off to a powerful ally. That'll anchor the image, he says, a little too casually. Another suggests faking an illness and retreating her from the public eye altogether. Thea sits in silence. Then she speaks. I will attend the Festival of Blossoms. Dead silence. The festival is the kingdom's most visible event. Days of parades, speeches, ceremonies, and one final blessing of the bloom, where the princess is expected to deliver a sermon of hope to the people. It will show them who I am, she says simply, whatever that means now. The king resists, but eventually relents. He sees the steel in her voice, the inevitability. The days leading up to the festival are a whirlwind. Dresses are altered to conceal armour. Make-up lessons are intensified. Poets draft speeches thick with allegory. Meanwhile, Thea practices a different sort of preparation. She trains harder, sleeps less, sharpens not just her sword, but her mind. Finally, the day arrives. The city erupts with colour. Blossoms are strewn in the streets, from jasmine in the merchant district to moonflowers in the temple square. Children wear crowns made of grass. Music spills from every alley. But the true spectacle is reserved for the princess's carriage, adorned in silver and amethyst, drawn by 12 white horses. Inside, Thea sits stone-faced, her heart galloping faster than the beasts outside. She wears a gown that shimmers like water, but beneath it, chainmail hugs her ribs. Her hair is braided with golden wire. On her lap rests a hidden dagger. As the carriage turns onto the central avenue, she sees them, her people. Thousands of faces, curious, expectant, loyal, and unsure. She realizes they're not cheering the princess. They're watching to see who she really is. The ceremony unfolds like clockwork. Music, speeches, petals drifting from the sky. Then comes her moment. She ascends the marble platform, sunlight casting a glow behind her. For a breath, all is still. Then, a loud gasp cuts through the silence. A boy in the front row, perhaps 10 years old, points. "She's wearing boots," he shouts. "Like mine." The crowd stirs. Then, without thinking, Tia lifts her skirt slightly, revealing sturdy leather boots beneath the gown. "They're perfect for running," she says, voice steady. A beat. Then a ripple of laughter. And then something strange happens. The people begin to cheer, not thunderously, but with rising sincerity. They clap for the honesty, the bravery. Some still whisper. A few turn away, but many, many stand taller. She gives her speech, not the one the poets wrote. She speaks from the dreams, from the scrolls, from the bruises beneath silk. "I was born with a name that fit the mould," she says, "then given one that broke it. But neither tells you who I am. I wear gowns, I wear chainmail. I can sew, and I can command armies. If you want a perfect ruler, I am not that. But if you want one who will protect you with everything I am that." Later, back in the palace, her father waits. He says nothing for a long time. Then, "You were never what I expected." "Neither were you," she replies. They say little else. But the silence this time is not heavy. It breathes. Spring in Verdancia always arrives too early, nudging aside the last stubborn snowdrifts like a child rearranging their room. Trees burst awake in the courtyards, daffodils poke through palace cracks, and the great halls begin to smell less of burning pine and more of sun-warmed stone and dew. But this year, the warmth carries something else with it, a kind of nervous energy. Word of the Festival of Blossoms has spread far beyond the capital, carried by merchant wagons, whispered in temple corridors and immortalized in song by travelling bards. The tale of the princess who wore boots has become legend overnight. Some call her bold, others call her dangerous. But within the royal walls, it's business as unusual. Princess Thea is now both more visible and more guarded. The king, equal parts wary and proud, allows her a few more freedoms, but each step she takes is watched, analysed, and recorded. Courtiers and nobles walk more carefully around her now, bowing lower, speaking more formally, yet avoiding her gaze, as though afraid of being seen too clearly in return. Still, Thea carves out her own world within the palace. She makes a habit of rising early, before the noise of politics takes over the air, and exploring the outer gardens alone. There, where jasmine grows wild and palace guards pretend not to watch her from the shadows, she can breathe. One morning, as the mist is just lifting, she finds a small statue tucked behind a hedge. It's cracked, overgrown with moss, and bears no plaque. The figure is androgynous, arms outstretched, half smiling with a secret. Curious, she returns the next day with a brush and begins cleaning it. It becomes a ritual. Every morning she scrubs a little more. Eventually she uncovers the inscription, Leora, Keeper of the Two Paths. She doesn't know who Leora was. The name isn't in any official records, and when she asks her tutors, they feign ignorance. But Murdo the scholar, now semi-retired and living in a tower suite stuffed with owls, tells her a story over a cup of herbal broth. Leora, he wheezes, was a priestess, or possibly a warlord. No one quite agrees. Some say they could speak to animals. Others say they founded the secret schools where philosophy and swordplay were taught together. One thing's certain. They lived between roles, never fully one thing or another. Some called it divine, others blasphemy. Thea thinks about that long after the broth has gone cold. Living between things, yes, she knows that life. And yet, she also feels herself shifting. Not away from one truth into another, but deeper into both. She finds herself enjoying embroidery not because it's proper, but because there's patience in the stitches. She takes up calligraphy and fencing in the same afternoon. She studies history, law, and military strategy with equal fascination. If anyone asks, she simply says she's preparing. For what, she doesn't say, but the peace doesn't last. At a dinner banquet for a visiting duke, a whisper sets the entire room on edge. A letter has arrived, no insignia, sealed in wax so dark it's nearly black. Inside, a single sentence. "We see the lie in your lace." The court falls into chaos behind closed doors. The letter is a threat. But from whom? The Eastern Coalition? The Southern Barons? Or someone closer? That night Thea stands before her mirror clutching the letter. Her reflection stares back. Taller now, less rounded in the face, eyes like cooled steel. She doesn't flinch. "Then let them look," she mutters. The next day she walks the training yard in full view of the guards. She wears her gown, yes, but over it she straps a leather cuirass. No one dares stop her. She lifts a wooden sword, tosses another to a startled page, and begins sparring, laughing with every blocked blow. It's a message. I won't hide anymore. That act, seemingly small, sparks a second wave of reaction across the kingdom. This time the gossip includes fear. Nobles begin questioning succession. Can a princess who trains like a prince still rule? Is tradition being shattered beyond repair? The royal advisers convene again, more divided than ever. Some push for a more conventional presentation. Others argue the people are adapting, slowly perhaps, but surely. The king, for once, says little. He watches his daughter from afar, silent, tired, possibly even afraid. Then comes the invitation. A royal emissary from the northern realm of Avadrin requests a diplomatic visit. The queen there, Rasha al-Namira, is known for her formidable intelligence and her equally formidable disdain for Verdancia's traditions. She rules a matriarchal society where power is not inherited by gender, but by merit and demonstration of will. King Halvian hesitates. It's a risk. But Thea urges him. "Let me go," she says. "Let them see who they're dealing with, not the illusion. Me." Preparations are swift. Thea travels with a small retinue, 2 guards, a scribe, and a translator. The journey north is long, cold, and breathtaking. As they pass through foreign lands, the people react in different ways. Some bow, others avert their eyes. One village child throws a bouquet of frost lilies and says, "You're the truth princess, aren't you?" At last they arrive in Avadrin. The palace is a contrast in every way. Built from black stone and gold, its towers shaped like spirals, its halls open to the wind. Queen Rasha greets Thea not with courtesy, but with curiosity. "You're the one who wears both chains and wings," she says, more observation than compliment. Over the following days, Thea attends court sessions, debates policy, even spars with Avadrin's champion in a ceremonial duel. She wins, not with brute strength, but cleverness, disarming her opponent with a flick of her cloak and a surprise pivot. The crowd roars. That evening the Queen invites her to a private dinner. There are no guards, no formality, just grilled figs, rosewater and wine. Rasha leans forward. "You could be a ruler not just of Verdancia," she says, "but of change itself." Thea doesn't reply right away. She stares out at the torchlit balcony beyond, where the stars pulse like slow, deliberate heartbeats. "Maybe," she finally says, "if they let me." Rasha smiles. "They won't. That's why you must take it." The return home is even colder, the winds biting with urgency. Rumours ride ahead of them like invisible riders. By the time Thea reaches Verdancia, 2 things are clear. The people are divided, and someone within the court is trying to sabotage her. A scroll has been forged, one suggesting Thea is not the rightful heir at all, that another child was born and hidden away. It's a sloppy fabrication, but it sows enough doubt to demand investigation. The king is furious. "They want chaos," he tells Thea. "They'll burn the kingdom before they let you lead." To which she replies calmly, "Then let's start the fire on our own terms." The next morning she calls a gathering, not just nobles, but the common folk as well. She chooses the old amphitheatre, long unused, its stones cracked and moss-laced. There she steps into the open and speaks plainly. "I was born a boy," she says, "raised a princess, taught to wield words and weapons. You've called me strange, brave, improper, holy, but none of those are the whole truth. I am Thea of Verdancia, and I will not hide." The crowd is silent at first. Then, slowly it begins, applause hesitant but real. Some walk out, others cry, but most stay. Later that evening, tucked away in the quiet tower where Leora's statue now gleams with fresh polish, Thea finally lets herself cry. Not from fear, but from relief. She has told the truth, and the kingdom is still standing. For now. The seasons shift again, and with them, so does the kingdom. Verdancia enters a spring unlike any before. No formal decree has been issued, and yet something in the air feels newly unsettled. The nobles grow cautious, the merchants uncertain. Farmers in the lowlands whisper over their ploughs, and children in schoolyards repeat a name with curious reverence. Princess Thea, the in-between. In the royal court, a new rhythm takes hold. Tense, unsteady, and unpredictable. Meetings grow longer. Advisors choose their words like stepping stones across a turbulent stream. Some push for constitutional reforms, while others secretly gather support for alternate successors. But none have Thea's fire, and none command the strange, growing loyalty she now does among the people. Even her enemies admit it. She has become a symbol, a mirror that reflects the questions many are too afraid to ask. Inside the palace, Thea's days are longer than ever. She's 16 now, tall and lean, her voice deeper, her movements more decisive. She trains daily in the courtyard, where guards no longer watch with bemusement but with awe. She studies with tutors who have finally stopped correcting her pronouns and started listening. She walks the halls not with ceremony but with purpose, and she is watched. Always. The whisper network among the nobles has grown into a low hum. They know the old way is cracking, but change, for them, tastes like ash. One afternoon, Thea visits the royal seamstress, a woman named Gelia who has dressed monarchs for nearly 4 decades. Gelia is fitting her for the midsummer gala gown, and the mood is unusually quiet. Finally, Gelia speaks. "Do you know what I remember?" she says, threading silver into blue silk. "The first day you came here. A bundle of nerves. Wouldn't sit still. Called yourself a knight, not a lady." Thea smiles faintly. "I remember too," she says. "You gave me peppermint to keep me calm." Gelia nods. "It's strange, dressing someone for a crown not yet claimed. But I believe it now. I believe in what you're doing." It's the closest thing to a blessing Thea has ever received from someone outside her family, yet the threats haven't stopped. Weeks after her public declaration, another spy is caught in the palace gardens. This one is not mechanical but flesh and blood. A noble's scribe from the west, carrying encoded messages and maps of Thea's movements. He's interrogated quietly and disappears even more quietly. The message is clear. Someone is preparing for a coup. In response, Thea tightens her inner circle. She creates new roles within the palace, positions for scholars, soldiers, and clerks not born into privilege but into purpose. She names a baker's daughter her lead strategist, a former thief her chief of security, and an orphaned poet her official scribe. This, too, earns her enemies. "They are not of noble blood," one lord protests in open court. "To which blood are you loyal?" Thea replies, calm and sharp as a frost-edged blade. "Mine, or yours?" The court falls silent. Outside the palace, unrest simmers. In the merchant city of Dalian, a riot breaks out after a merchant refuses to serve a gender-non-conforming patron. By dusk, 6 storefronts are in flames and the city watch is overwhelmed. Thea sends emissaries not with weapons, but with weavers, bakers, and translators. She speaks in a fireside broadcast, unprecedented in Verdantia. "I do not rule with tradition," she says, the flames crackling behind her. "I rule with truth, and truth demands we see each other wholly." That speech, short, unscripted, reaches every corner of the kingdom. It is translated, memorized, even printed on fabric banners. One appears at the foot of the palace. Truth has no gender, neither does courage, but not all are swayed. The western houses, led by the ancient family of Marwyn, begin building coalitions. They speak in riddles, but their goal is clear: to challenge the throne and restore the pure line. Pure, in this case, meaning predictable. Male, unambiguous. Their weapon? Not an army, not yet, but a child. A 10-year-old boy named Ellen claimed to be the true heir, a son born of Halvian's late second wife, and hidden for safety during the war years. It's a lie, but a clever one. Documents appear, witnesses are bribed, paintings are forged. The court reels. Thea sees the ploy for what it is. But the people? They begin to waver. Doubt, once planted, grows fast. The king is bedridden by now, his once thunderous voice reduced to murmurs. His grip on the sceptre is mostly ceremonial. Thea visits him daily. On one such visit she finds him awake, alert, eyes glassy but focused. "They'll try to take it from you," he rasps. "I know," she replies. He studies her a long moment. "You were never a mistake." It's the closest he's ever come to an apology. She presses his hand gently. That night, The wind howls louder than usual, and the palace windows shiver in their panes. The old king dies before dawn. The mourning period is brief, ceremonial, subdued. His body lies in state, guarded day and night. The people line up in silence to pay respects. Some weep for the man, others for the era. Thea does not cry. She stands vigil for 3 days, neither eating nor speaking. On the 4th morning she leaves a single sprig of lavender on his chest and walks out into the dawn air. A coronation is expected, but not immediately. The court wants time to prepare, to plan, to argue. Thea decides otherwise. Within a week she announces a public coronation, open to all classes, to be held not in the royal chapel, but in the open amphitheatre where she once stood and declared herself. It is a scandal, but it is also brilliant. As the day nears, allies arrive from unexpected corners. Queen Rasha of Avadrin sends a delegation bearing rare white sapphires. The desert tribe sends silk and a letter of recognition. Even the elusive Frost Guard of the North pledge neutrality, high praise in their language. On the eve of the coronation, Thea prepares alone. She chooses no crown. Instead, she wears her hair unbound, her armour polished, and a gown that flows like midnight over steel. Across her chest a sash bearing the words, "Child of Truth, Ruler of Many." As dawn breaks, thousands gather in the amphitheatre. Merchants, nobles, smiths, farmers, children, all together. The ceremony is simple. A song, an oath, a sword raised high. No crown, no titles, just her name, Thea. And then she speaks. "My reign begins not with what I am," she says, "but with what I choose to become. I am not queen. I am not king. I am ruler. I am your reflection. Sometimes confusing, often unfinished, always true. The cheers that follow are deafening. For the first time in Verdantia's long history, the people don't just accept a monarch, they claim one. After the ceremony, as dusk sets in and torches bloom like fireflies along the stone walkways, Thea stands at the top of the palace steps. She watches the crowd below, the banners waving, the musicians tuning up for the celebration. And somewhere among the revellers, a child holds up a handmade sign. It reads, "Thank you for showing me I exist." Thea's breath catches. Then she nods, once, firmly, as if anchoring herself to this moment, to this impossible, beautiful thing she has become. A monarch, a mirror, a beginning. The sky over Verdantia turns rose gold in the weeks that follow, as if the very heavens approve of the upheaval. Still, despite the pageantry of Thea's open coronation, not everyone celebrates. In high towers and shadowed halls, resistance begins to organise. The western houses, led by the rigid and ever-proud Marwyn family, quietly expand their reach. They send missives written in invisible ink, hold secret meetings under the guise of harvest planning, and speak often of Ellen, the so-called true heir. Thea knows the danger is not over. If anything, the real test has only begun. She doesn't wait for an attack to come to her. Instead, she calls together the first grand circle of voices, a new governing body of her invention, composed of not just nobles, but artisans, warriors, sages and citizens from every corner of the kingdom. There are 15 seats, and 12 of them are filled by people no royal advisor has ever dared to summon. A blacksmith from the Northern Isles, a weaver from the Southern Hills, a blind cartographer whose maps once saved 100 families during the river floods. The nobles protest. Of course they do. They have no training in law, one duke sneers, and yet they live under it daily, Thea replies without blinking. The grand circle meets beneath the palace lantern hall, where golden light reflects off every polished surface and echoes stretch into eternity. They debate everything, from farming policies to military spending to the reclassification of noble titles. Thea listens. Often she does not speak until the end. Her rulership, she insists, must be shared if it is to survive. Power, she says during the first session, is not a sword, it's a bridge. Yet even bridges crack under pressure. During the 3rd week of circle meetings, a scroll is slipped beneath the council table. It contains a single phrase scrawled in red ink. Princess, prince, or pawn, you will kneel before blood. They know it is from the Marwyn faction. That night, Thea walks alone through the oldest part of the palace, where the walls still bear the soot stains of ancient fires. Here, in a forgotten library tower, she finds the answer not in scrolls, but in silence. She takes a seat in a high-back chair once used by scribes who chronicled the founding of Verdansia. There, as wind whistles through cracked stained glass, she makes a decision. The lie of Ellen must be confronted. A week later, she sends an invitation, not a demand, to the Marwyn stronghold. It is couched in the language of diplomacy, but carries the weight of truth. "Let us meet," the scroll reads, "so our people may hear the story with clear eyes." The Marwyns accept. The encounter takes place in the neutral city of Revell, a merchant hub where loyalty bends with profit. The city square is transformed into a forum, complete with banners and crier posts declaring the test of airship. The entire realm tunes in, not just physically but through voice orbs, magical devices once reserved for wartime broadcasts, now repurposed to relay the event to every corner of the kingdom. Ellen is introduced first. He is a pale, wide-eyed boy dressed in ceremonial robes far too heavy for his frame. He looks not afraid but confused, as if unsure why he's there. Then Thea enters. No fanfare, just steady footsteps, a neutral tunic, and her trademark leather boots. The crowd falls silent. The Marwyn matriarch, Lady Valessa, delivers a speech long on lineage and light on evidence. She gestures to forged documents, introduces weeping witnesses, and quotes laws from before the current century. When it is Thea's turn, she says little. "I was born," she begins, "not as your idea of a princess, but I have lived as your servant, your protector, your mirror. If this boy is your heir, then ask him what he loves about this land. Ask him what he dreams for it." A pause. She turns to Ellen gently. "Tell them, child, not who you are, but who you want to be." Ellen swallows hard. His voice is a whisper. "I want to go home. I like painting." The silence breaks. Later the Marwyns retreat with red faces and trembling hands. The crowd erupts, not into cheers, but something stronger. Belief, not in bloodlines, but in truth, earned. Thea kneels beside Ellen before she leaves. "You were used," she says softly, "but you are not broken." She ensures the boy is placed with a quiet family in the west, far from the noise. No fanfare, just peace. That night, bonfires light up the hills around Revell. People chant her name not as ruler, but as something else entirely. Mother of the future. Back in Verdansia, reform accelerates. The Grand Circle finalizes a sweeping series of changes. Noble taxes increased. The right to self-identify in public records guaranteed. Military conscription broadened to include women and non-binary citizens. The royal seal is changed, not dramatically, just enough. The figure on the crest, once clearly masculine, now holds both a sword and a spindle, with no marked gender. Some traditions remain. Festivals are preserved. Harvest rites continue, but their meanings evolve. During the next Festival of Blossoms, children wear whatever colours they choose. No more pink for girls or blue for boys. One child even dresses as a griffin and recites a speech in rhyme. No one bats an eye. Of course, there is pushback. Small rebellions, anonymous pamphlets with crude drawings, a failed attempt to seize the treasury vaults. But none of them gather real strength. The people, at last, are choosing. Still, the palace remains a place of vigilance. One dusk, as fireflies begin their silent ballet over the reflecting pool, Thea receives a visitor. It's Gelia, the seamstress, carrying a package wrapped in violet silk. "I've finished it," she says simply. Thea unwraps the fabric. Inside is a coronation robe, but unlike any before, it's asymmetrical, layered with both stiff formal brocade and fluid chiffon. One half bears sword emblems, the other constellations. "It's not traditional," Gelia says. "It's perfect," Thea replies. That night she hangs it on her wall, not as armour, but as a reminder. She's a ruler made, not born. A being of contradictions and wholeness. In the quiet hours before sleep, she writes in her journal, a habit she's taken up since the Grand Circle meetings began. Today's entry reads, "I was never meant to exist in the way they expected, but here I am, not prince, not princess, not pawn, just Thea, and they will learn that this is enough." Beyond the palace walls, thunder murmurs, storms on the horizon perhaps, or change, always cycling forward. But for now, Verdansia sleeps beneath the protection of a monarch who dared to be both, and neither. The kingdom of Verdantia wakes slowly after the storm of change, like a forest soaking up morning dew after a long night of lightning. Thea's coronation, the confrontation with the Marwens, and the creation of the Grand Circle have done more than restructure power. They have upended the way people imagine what power even looks like. But if the crown now rests lighter on her brow, the burden behind it grows heavier. With public favour swelling and her enemies scattered, Thea could easily settle into the throne, content with her legacy already reshaped. Yet deep down she knows this story has not reached its climax. The kingdom's spirit has begun to shift, yes, but its foundation still groans beneath old stones. Her journey must reach further, beyond politics, beyond palace walls, beyond even identity. The first echo of what's to come arrives on a breeze, specifically a message carried by a desert falcon, its legs wrapped in leather dyed with sand-coloured dyes and marked with the sign of the arid sash, Verdantia's mysterious desert allies to the south. The note is brief. Come. We have something to show you. It concerns the prophecy. That word again, prophecy, the one she once thought only existed to justify a costume. But now, with the realm barely holding itself upright beneath her rule, that ancient puzzle pulses with new urgency. She prepares to leave the capital within a fortnight, selecting only a small group for the journey. Her bodyguard Kessa, a historian named Luni who once deciphered temple carvings by moonlight, and a scout with the uncanny ability to hear danger before it appears. They travel quietly, avoiding public roads, and skirt the edges of Verdantia's territories until even the trees change shape. The forests thin, replaced by scrub and sun-hardened plains. Villages become rarer and silence thickens. The sand begins to sing at dusk, high and ghost-like, as if the earth itself is humming in its sleep. By the 6th day they arrive at the edge of the Amarin wastes, where the desert breathes like a dragon in slumber, vast, rippling and alive with heat. Here, under the shadow of carved stone towers older than written memory, the sash welcomes them. Their leader, Queen Sihra, is a woman of few words and sharp eyes. Her robes are dust-dyed crimson, and her voice crackles like burning sage. You have stepped beyond politics, she says to Tia. You now seek truth, and truth is buried deeper than power. Sihra leads them to the Hall of Wind-Eaters, a temple carved into a sandstone cliff. Inside, the walls tell stories not in ink, but in etched spirals and coloured glass. Every step echoes with forgotten names. At the centre lies a basin filled not with water, but with fine ash. Place your hand in it, Sihra commands. Thea obeys. The ash is cool, softer than silk. It swirls up her wrist like smoke. A vision floods her. She stands in an ancient court, not her own, but eerily similar. The ruler on the throne wears no crown, but a circlet of flowers and feathers. Around them, courtiers of every shape and hue bow. There is no division of gender, no rigid hierarchy. Instead, people rise by acts, not blood. The ruler speaks. To lead, one must unlearn everything. Then the vision shatters like glass. She gasps, pulling her hand back. The ash clings to her skin, glittering faintly. Sihra nods, unfazed. You saw the memory of a previous age, before kings and queens were ever names. That court ruled by dual spirit. What you have become, Thea, is not new. It is a return. This revelation is not just surprising, it's seismic. Verdantia has long considered itself the pinnacle of civilization, a culmination of human order. But now she sees it may merely be a late echo in a much older song. That night, she walks alone into the dunes, guided only by the stars. The wind tugs at her cloak like an old friend. She sits in the sand and begins to dig, not for artifacts but for clarity. What if the prophecy was never about becoming something unnatural? What if it was a reminder that the kingdom must remember its forgotten shape, that rulers once lived as both and neither, that identity was once fluid, accepted, sacred? Lune finds her at dawn, her hands coated in sand, her eyes bloodshot but clear. You saw something, he says gently. I remembered something, she replies, and I think Verdantia has forgotten. They depart the next morning, not with fanfare but with promises. Queen Sihra gifts Thea a pendant made of obsidian and desert glass, forged in the heat of truth. Wear it when you next speak before the doubters, she says. It will remind them that old things live still. The journey back is different. Thea does not rush. She stops in villages along the way, not to lecture, but to listen. To a child who raises goats and dreams of being both a mother and a monk. To an elder who was born with one name and lived with another, quietly, in a world that never asked. She realizes more than ever that her story is not singular. Back in the capital, change is waiting like a coiled spring. The Grand Circle greets her with open arms, but also new concerns. A strange figure has been seen in the Northern Highlands, cloaked in black, leaving behind tokens etched with symbols no one recognizes. They call him the Mirror Man. Rumours say he claims to be the embodiment of the prophecy's dark half, the one who wasn't chosen, a shadow monarch, a necessary opposite. Some think he's a hoax. Others believe he's the physical manifestation of everything the kingdom refuses to face. Shame, fear, the hunger for certainty. Thea is neither intrigued nor afraid. She is resolute. He's not my opposite, she tells the circle. He's my echo, and echoes don't lead, they follow. Still, she orders scouts to track his movements. Meanwhile, she returns to her daily routines, but none of them are routine anymore. She's begun rewriting the foundational scrolls of Vedancia's governance. The law of heirs now reads, "Succession shall follow the worth of deed, not the shape of birth." The Chronicle of Bloodlines is replaced by the Chronicle of Oaths, a living record of those who vow themselves to the realm through service. These are not just reforms, they are transformations. She reopens the old cathedral once reserved for coronations, and converts it into the Hall of Becoming, a place where anyone, noble or not, may come to speak their truth, ask for guidance, or simply exist without judgment. One afternoon, as spring gives way to the wet heat of early summer, Thea walks the hall alone. A child approaches, small, freckled, holding a wooden sword and wearing a borrowed tiara. "Can I be both?" the child asks, eyes wide. Thea kneels. "You already are," she whispers. Outside, the bells ring, not in mourning, not in war, but in becoming. As the summer matures, so does the tension. Though the blossoms have long fallen from the trees and the air is now thick with the promise of storms, the capital of Vedancia seems to hold its breath. Rumours have taken root, sprawling through taverns, markets, and even the palace corridors. Everyone speaks of the shadowy visitor who leaves silver tokens behind and speaks in riddles, always in riddles. The Mirror Man. He becomes more than a whisper. Sightings multiply. In the southern trade post of Graven's Hook, a merchant swears he spoke to a man whose face seemed to shift in the reflection of his wineglass. Young and old, male and female, solemn and laughing. In the eastern cliffs of Bereth's Reach, a shepherd finds a rune-stamped stone bearing the words, "One crown splits the world." Then a message arrives at the palace. It is not addressed to Thea, but to the monarch between names. Delivered in a lacquered box no one saw placed, the letter inside reads simply, "Balance is not found, it is taken." The seal is wax, black as pitch, bearing the mirror symbol again, an oval split by a jagged line, both sides reflecting each other, but neither whole. It's not a symbol anyone recognizes from known factions, and yet something about it feels ancient, familiar in its menace. Thea calls a midnight council with her grand circle. The room is lit only by lanterns, no torches, no hearth, giving the chamber a surreal, flickering glow. The circle debates. Some want to dismiss the Mirror Man as a theatrical hoax. Others, especially those who remember the old myths of the twin-spirited god Asmari, fear a more mystical threat. Historians still argue whether the figure of Asmari was a deity or a symbolic archetype. Some scrolls describe them as a keeper of harmony between dualities. Others claim they were a test, a divine being who could unravel kingdoms by asking questions no one wanted to answer. Either way, the Mirror Man has adopted Asmari's mantle, and now uses it as a stage from which to challenge Thea's reign. The next morning, a silver token is found on the statue of Leora, the ancient figure Thea once unearthed and cleaned with her own hands. The token reads, "She remembers." Do you? Thea feels something deeper than fear, an unease like a blade drawn quietly in the dark. Not threat, but challenge, a test of her spirit. Rather than hide from it, she leans in. She orders a search, Not to hunt the Mirror Man, but to find his origin. Who funds him? Who protects him? What scrolls does he read? The scout teams return with strange reports. One brings back a poem burned into the bark of a cypress tree. Where once the crown was worn in twain, now comes the voice of mirrored pain. Not hers, not his, nor theirs combined, but that which even stars rewind. Another scout finds a cavern filled with wax tablets, each etched with messages echoing Thea's own speeches, twisted and rearranged, like someone is building a shadow version of her ideology. Her own words become weapons used against her. The people begin to talk. The same folk who once wept at her coronation now look sideways. Some wonder aloud, in marketplaces and kitchens, if two rulers must rise to keep the balance, if a monarchy without dual opposition is somehow cursed. In response, Thea makes a bold move. She declares the first annual festival of the Fractured Crown, a public event where anyone of any background may present their vision for the realm's future, or their past. Art, song, dance, and debate are all welcome. No censorship. It's risky. She knows this, but she also knows her people. They're tired of whispers. They want voice. The festival lasts 7 days. On the third night, a masked performer enacts a silent play of a ruler who splits themselves into two spirits, one of fire, one of fog. The fire rules with charisma, the fog with patience. The people love the play. They cheer, they cry. But when Thea asks to meet the performer, they are gone, vanished without trace. In their dressing tent, a single silver token left on the mirror. This one reads, "Even you must choose." The implication is clear. The Mirror Man, or his followers, intend to force a division. Not just of rule, but of identity. They seek to pressure Thea into declaring a single version of herself, discarding the balance she has so carefully nurtured. In the days that follow, she sees the signs of it everywhere. Markets selling split-faced dolls, street preachers shouting that the age of in-between is over, children arguing over which version of Thea is real, the warrior or the weaver. She says nothing at first. She listens, watches. Then, at the festival's closing, she stands before the crowd. She wears no crown, no robe, no sword, only a tunic made from woven night silk, hand-stitched with constellations that shimmer faintly under the moonlight. "I hear your fears," she says. "I know the pressure of living inside a world that demands you be either this or that. I carry it every day, but let me ask you this. What if the Mirror Man is right?" Gasps ripple through the crowd. She continues, "What if balance is not something you inherit, but something you create? And what if I have created mine not by choosing between identities, but by becoming one that includes them all?" She steps down from the stage and walks into the crowd, slowly, deliberately. "Look at me," she says. "Look closely. I am not divided. I am layered. I am not an answer. I am a question, and questions do not kneel." The applause begins slowly. Then it rolls across the crowd like summer thunder. Not frenzied, not even joyous, but solid, like a vow. That night, a final token is found. This one not silver, but obsidian, etched simply with, "Then we will wait." The Mirror Man disappears. Sightings stop. The tokens cease. But Thea knows the game is not over. She has not defeated him, only reshaped the board. In the quiet weeks that follow, she turns her attention inward again. She commissions a painting, not of herself, but of the kingdom as she now sees it. A wide, sprawling tapestry of individuals, none standing in the centre, all woven together. The image includes a baker kneeling beside a prince, a soldier with a sewing needle, a monk raising a child not born of their blood. It is titled Becoming. She hangs it not in the royal hall, but in the public library. Meanwhile, in the Hall of Becoming, people come and go, some to reflect, others to speak their truth. One day, a young man leaves behind a note folded into a flower. It reads, "I was afraid until I saw your face. Now I know I don't have to be just one thing." Thea reads it with a lump in her throat. Not for sorrow, but for recognition. The war against certainty is not won with swords. It is won in moments like this. One note, one life, one mirror, whole. The heart of summer arrives with a breathless shimmer, the air thick with honeysuckle and tension. Verdancia, though outwardly thriving, begins to feel like a held note in a song that refuses to resolve. The streets are bustling with travellers and performers left over from the Festival of the Fractured Crown. Yet beneath the cheer, something unresolved hums beneath each step of the cobbled alleys. A kingdom in transformation may look vibrant, but it also trembles. Princess Thea, or rather Monarch Thea, as she's now referred to in official decrees, has settled into her role not with comfort, but with focus. Each morning she wakes before dawn, dresses without fuss, and meets with her advisors in a circular chamber called the Windward Room, where no seat sits higher than another. The walls are etched with poems from every region of the realm. Democracy by design. One morning, as the cicadas begin their symphony in the orchard trees, Thea receives a gift, delivered without a note, no fanfare. It's a sculpture, carved from blue amber, shaped like two hands cupped around a single flame. At first glance, the hands appear to belong to different people, one wide and calloused, the other long-fingered and elegant. But upon closer inspection, the wrists blur into each other. The artist has rendered them as one body, divided only by perception. Beneath the sculpture, a tag reads simply, "From the North." The ice has begun to melt. It's more than art. It's a message. Thea convenes a special council session. Word has reached her that the Frostborn clans, the reclusive people of the far north who live among glaciers and speak a language made mostly of breath, have begun to stir, not in war, but in motion. After centuries of isolation, they've sent their first emissary in generations. Her name is Virel, and she arrives cloaked in seal fur and silence. At the diplomatic gathering, Virel speaks in the frost tongue, her words forming vapour in the warm summer air. A translator, thin as a reed and twice as twitchy, interprets for the court. "You have stirred something," Virel says through him, "a memory that had gone quiet in our blood." She presents Thea with an ancient seal, flat stone carved with symbols that resemble both a bird in flight and a tree in bloom. It is one of the lost seer's marks, known only in rumour. Legend says they were given to monarchs who ruled not by bloodline, but by truth-speaking. Virel offers it not as a gift, but as a challenge. "There is one who waits," she says, "in the Mirror Fortress." The name catches Thea off guard. The Mirror Fortress is a myth, half whispered in bedtime stories and half erased from royal records. Supposedly built into the cliffs where ice and sky blur, it's said to be home to a being who once advised kings and queens, not with strategy, but with possibility. Some called it spirit, others a seer cursed to speak only in riddles. No one has seen the place in over 200 years. Historians still argue whether the Mirror Fortress ever truly existed, or if it was just a metaphor for introspection. But Virel's eyes say otherwise, and the seal in Thea's hand pulses faintly with warmth, like it recognises her grip. Thea makes her decision by nightfall. She will go north. No entourage. Just a small company. Lune the historian, Kessar her bodyguard, and Siran, a weather witch who once quelled a firestorm with her bare hands. They set off at sunrise, cloaked in grey and bearing no insignias. No one in the court protests, at least not openly. They've learned by now, when Thea chooses movement, resistance only delays the inevitable. The journey north is brutal. Mountains rise like titans, and the sun becomes a pale suggestion behind endless clouds. Their horses falter, their boots ice over, the air becomes thinner, heavier with every step. It takes 3 weeks to cross the final ridge, by which point their skin has chapped and their supplies dwindled to dried roots and melted snow. And then, one morning, the frost parts. The Mirror Fortress stands ahead, carved not into rock but into the very glacier itself. Its walls are glassy, reflective, glowing faintly blue from within as though lit by memory. No doors, no windows, just silence. They step forward. No resistance, no guards. The fortress opens to them like a sigh. Inside, light bends strangely. Reflections twist. Voices echo before they are spoken. Each wall is a mirror, but not one reflects the present. Instead, each surface shows a different version of the person who walks past. Lune sees himself as a child, weeping at a lost book. Kessar sees himself standing alone on a battlefield, bloodless but victorious. Thea, though, she sees herself in a dozen forms. One wears full armour, face shadowed. Another wears robes, eyes lined with age. One wears neither, just light. None of them seem surprised to see her. They walk deeper into the maze of the fortress until they reach a chamber with no ceiling, open to the sky. Snow drifts down gently, vanishing before it touches the floor. At the centre stands a figure, cloaked in silver, the seer. They speak without turning. You came later than expected. Their voice is neither male nor female, young nor old. It sounds like memory and wind. I've come for answers, Thea says. The seer turns slowly. Their face is smooth, not ageless but timeless. Eyes of obsidian. They speak. You are the question, and also the key. Then they raise their hand and point to the farthest wall. Thea walks toward it. The wall shows not her reflection, but Verdantia's, twisting, trembling, uncertain. People arguing in the streets, children wearing masks, a monarchy that flickers between shapes. And then, from the reflection's centre, a seed grows, a tree, reaching into the sky. What am I supposed to do? She asks. Choose not between forms, the seer replies, but between purposes. Then they vanish. Nothing dramatic, no smoke, no gust of wind, just gone. Thea stands in the empty room, the weight of every version of herself pressing inward. She doesn't cry, she doesn't bow. Instead, she places the seer's seal into a small indentation on the mirrored wall, and the tree begins to bloom, not in reflection, but behind her. She turns, slowly. A tree, real, alive, growing from the icy floor, reaches toward the open sky. Its bark shimmers like glass. Its leaves sing. The fortress is no myth. It is a forge. And she has just been remade. The journey back to Verdantia is quieter. The wind no longer howls. It hums. And in her dreams, Thea no longer walks through mirrors. She walks through doors. The return from the mirror fortress takes less time than expected. Perhaps because their minds are quieter now, their footsteps less weighed by questions. Or perhaps the path itself, once treacherous and winding, has shifted in response to Thea's transformation. No one says it aloud, but each of them feels it, that they are not the same travellers who entered the glacier. Something fundamental has changed, even if they cannot yet articulate what. When Verdantia's gates rise to welcome them back, the capital is basking in the flush of late summer. The skies are low and golden. Cicadas thrum in the hedges, and market stalls burst with dyed silks, sugared figs, and gossip. As always, news travels faster than footsteps. Thea has been gone only weeks, yet the rumours of her journey stretch wildly. Some say she found the ghost of a dead god. Others insist she battled her mirror self and won. The truth is stranger still. She found not an answer, but a blooming. She doesn't announce her return with ceremony, no procession, no royal decree. Instead, she walks directly to the royal gardens, boots crunching softly on gravel, and sits beneath the giant sycamore that has stood longer than the palace itself. Its bark is rough with initials carved over generations. She finds her mother's there, nearly hidden beneath moss, LRH for Lisra of the Highland Reach. Thea rests her fingers on the carving, lets her breath slow. It's not sorrow she feels, it's something rounder, more patient. Like time folding in on itself, Kessa finds her an hour later. He says nothing, just sits beside her and tosses an apple into the air. She catches it without looking. You're going to have to tell them eventually, he says after a while. I know, she replies. And so, that evening, as the moon hangs full and red over the horizon, Thea summons the Grand Circle and her senior advisors to the amphitheatre, not the palace. She wears simple garb, linen tunic, no symbols, hair loose. The people come too, as they always do now when she speaks. This time, there's no script, just her voice, even and low. I went north, she begins, not to seek power, but to find memory. What I discovered was not a secret, it was a seed. She tells them of the mirror fortress, of the visions, of the seer. I was never meant to rule as a boy, she continues, nor simply as a princess. I was meant to bloom beyond both, and so is this kingdom. She pauses. The silence that follows is not emptiness, it is a held breath. I will no longer wear a title, no king, no queen. From this day, I will be referred to simply as Monarch Thea. not as a rejection of the past, but as an embrace of something larger. It is the boldest claim she has ever made, not because it erases, but because it redefines. A ripple moves through the gathered crowd. Some faces frown, others widen with wonder. Loon, the historian, clutches his notes and murmurs, "They'll be rewriting the legal codices until winter." Later that night, the council debates, not against Thea's decision, those who oppose her have long been sidelined, but about logistics, succession protocols and symbols. A new seal is proposed, a tree with mirrored roots, its trunk hollow, open. Thea listens but does not interfere. In her chambers that evening she finds a small bundle waiting on her bed. Inside, another token. But this one is not from the Mirror Man. It's from the child who once left her a note in the Hall of Becoming. Their handwriting is more practiced now. The letter reads, "I told my village about you. At first they were scared, but then my brother said maybe he wanted to wear earrings too, so now we both do. Thank you." She sits on the edge of her bed, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Not from grief, from gratitude. For all the policies and speeches and mirrors she has faced, it is this, a simple note, a quiet shift in a child's life that reminds her what she's truly building. But the quiet doesn't last. A week after her return, a councillor from the distant coastal province of Nelvash arrives bearing urgent news. A fleet of ships has landed along the western cliffs, unauthorised, unmarked and unwelcomed. At first it's thought to be pirates, but reports soon reveal a more disturbing truth. The banners bear a symbol long thought extinct, an Ouroboros circling a sword. The sign of the Shard Order, a forgotten sect once exiled from Verdantia for attempting to overthrow the monarchy during the Great Sundering. They were believed to have been destroyed over a century ago. Apparently they were only sleeping. The Shard Order, according to the hastily exhumed texts, believed in singular purity of rule. One crown, one body, one destiny. They rejected all forms of fluid governance, and their exile had been absolute. But now they return, likely drawn by the instability of recent changes, by the Mirror Man's ripple, by the vision of a ruler they cannot classify. Thea gathers her advisors in the palace war room, a place she's barely used until now. The walls are lined with battle maps and war trophies. It smells of cedar and dust. "We will not meet fear with fear," she says, "but we will meet it." She dispatches envoys, fortifies border towers, and makes an open statement to the realm. The Shard Order seeks to return us to simplicity, but simplicity is not truth. It is erasure. We will not be erased. That line becomes a chant within hours. It's painted on tavern doors, sewn into cloaks, even sung by schoolchildren. We will not be erased. Still, there is no denying the tension. Coastal towns brace for skirmishes. The royal fleet is placed on alert. Defensive wards are reactivated, some for the first time in a generation. Thea takes the unusual step of personally visiting the western cliffs, accompanied only by her scout commander and Loon. There, standing on the edge of the bluffs, she sees the fleet. Black sails. Silent as teeth in the dark. She does not flinch. "We hold," she says. The first confrontation comes 2 nights later. A border outpost is attacked. 3 guards injured, none killed. The attackers wear no uniforms, but each carries a shard blade, a weapon made of fractured glass bound by magic and hatred. Thea orders no retaliation, not yet. Instead, she calls a summit of the realms. She invites every nearby kingdom and principality to Verdantia, friends and foes alike. Avadrin responds first, Queen Rasha sending a full diplomatic envoy. The Frostborn clans arrive next, escorted by Varel herself. Even the Desert Kingdoms send observers, intrigued by the rising conflict. Thea stands before them all in the Lantern Hall. "We are not under attack because we are weak," she says. "We are under attack because we dared to change." The delegates murmur. It is bold to admit vulnerability. But it is also true. That night, a candle is lit in every Verdantian window. Not from law, but from love. A signal. We are awake. We are whole. We remember. The candles burn all through the night in Verdantia, small flames of defiance and unity flickering behind window panes from the palace towers to the lowliest cottages. In the countryside, villagers place lanterns at crossroads and hang white cloth from trees. The capital's rooftops glimmer like constellations brought to earth. Even in provinces that once opposed Thea's reforms, the light spreads, quietly, hesitantly, but there. The Shard Order notices. By dawn, another message arrives, delivered not by raven or rider, but by illusion. In the palace garden, where dew beads the rose petals, a cloaked figure appears in a shimmer of heatless fire, a projection of magic. Thea is already waiting. She's been warned by Saran, a court mage, that the air had shifted oddly, something watching. The figure does not bow. Its voice is many at once, layered like an echo skipping across time. The projection speaks not to threaten, but to declare. We do not kneel to reflections. We come to shatter the false prism, step down, or be stepped over. Then it vanishes. Thea stands still for a long time, not afraid, but braced. The war, it seems, is no longer in rumour or on the horizon. It is here. She does not summon her council immediately. Instead, she walks to the eastern wing of the palace, to a room few visit anymore, the Royal Chamber of Relics. It is a vault of old banners, retired crowns, and objects of great symbolic weight. Among the artefacts she finds a statue of the first Verdantian ruler, Emdan the Mender. His likeness is severe, carved from riverstone, with a gaze like thunder and a stance that screams certainty. She studies it. What would Emdan have done had he faced an enemy not of blades, but of belief? Probably crushed it. But that, she decides, is why his reign ended in rebellion. She returns to the war room, where maps now drape the tables like the skins of forgotten beasts. Her advisors gather Kessa, Lune, Saran, several generals, and Queen Rasha of Avadrin, who arrived at dawn with an expression as unreadable as ever. We have a choice, Thea begins, hands resting lightly on the table. We meet them with violence and become the war they expect, or we meet them with something else. A trap, one general offers. A diversion, asks another. Thea shakes her head. A story. Confused silence, but Lune's eyes light up. A story, he repeats, understanding. Something to remind our people, and theirs, what this fight is truly about, and so they begin. Over the next 10 days, Verdantia doesn't mobilize in the traditional sense. No armies march, no conscription begins. Instead, the kingdom tells its tale. Bards are summoned, playwrights are commissioned, murals begin to appear in town squares, on the sides of barns and bakeries. Each one tells a different fragment of Thea's journey. Her dual upbringing, her public declaration, the mirror fortress, the encounter with the seer. At first, it seems like a distraction, but then something remarkable happens. The Shard Order begins to splinter. Defectors arrive at border towns claiming they were never told the truth, that they believed they were marching to restore a monarchy broken by perversion, not one evolving into something new. Some had been told the palace had fallen, that Thea ruled in disguise, hiding a monstrous form. The truth, when seen with their own eyes in painted walls and street performances, hits like sunrise. In one town, a group of defectors burns their shard blades and joins the city watch. In another, a courier delivers a bundle of documents, tactical maps, ship blueprints, names of shard commanders. The war, as it turns out, was built on misinformation. Now it begins to unravel, but not everywhere. A core remains, fanatical, small in number, but fierce, and they are not finished. The largest strike comes on the night of Verdantia's summer equinox, a celebration that Thea has revived as the festival of all light. It honours transitions, betweens, and beginnings. That night, while the streets are filled with dancing and songs, 3 shard operatives sneak into the palace through underground aqueducts built in the days of Emden. Disguised as torchbearers, they reach the eastern wing where the Hall of Becoming lies, Thea's sanctuary, the symbol of her reign. They plant explosives made of volatile crystal powder, designed to shatter mirrors and stone alike, but they are not alone. A young custodian, tasked with lighting incense before the morning guests arrive, hears the click of unfamiliar metal. She hides, watches, waits. Then quietly she releases a flare, a silent burst of golden light that floats like a dandelion seed into the night sky. The signal reaches Saran, who dispatches the palace guard without a word. The operatives are caught before they can ignite the charge. They scream of martyrdom, of purity, of cleansing the kingdom, but no one listens, not this time. The Hall of Becoming survives. The next morning, Thea visits the young custodian. She brings her a satchel of books and a ring, plain silver, etched with a small tree. "You saw," Thea says. "You chose." The girl bows, speechless. From that moment forward, no palace guard is stationed at the hall. Instead, volunteers from all walks of life rotate shifts, protecting it not with weapons, but with presence. The message is clear. This kingdom guards itself. But the Shard Order still exists. Small cells remain, hidden. Thea knows they will not vanish overnight. Hate rarely does. So she begins a new campaign, not of war, but of integration. Former Shard members who renounce the Order are given choices: exile, imprisonment, or re-education through service. Many choose the third. They work in libraries, farms, and archives. Some, in time, even swear allegiance to Thea's rule. The most symbolic moment comes months later, when one former Shard commander, Malek, a veteran with scarred hands and a deep voice, requests to join the Grand Circle. Thea agrees. After a grueling review, he is allowed a seat. At his first session, he speaks slowly, choosing each word like a step across a fragile bridge. "I believed I was saving Verdantia, but I was trying to preserve only my comfort. Thank you for not killing me." Loon leans over and whispers to Thea, "That's a first." Thea smiles, tired but warm. Meanwhile, construction begins on a new monument, not in the capital, but in the coastal region once raided by the Shard fleet. The monument is not grand or ornate. It is a ring of standing stones, each one blank. "Why blank?" a child asks during the dedication. "So we can write our own stories," Thea replies, "and erase them too." The Shard Order will not vanish from memory, but its meaning can change. Thea, now entering her 20th year, walks differently these days. Not heavy, not slow, but grounded. Like she's learned the rhythm of a realm that once buckled under expectation. She no longer wears the obsidian pendant from the Desert Queen every day, just on feast days. But it hangs still in her chambers, beside the Seer's seal and the first silver token ever left by the Mirror Man. Because even if the enemy has faded, the question remains. Balance is not found. It is taken and held. She holds it now, carefully, fiercely, without apology. Autumn descends on Verdantia like a soft sigh, spreading gold over vineyards and rust across the palace vines. The summer heat retreats, and in its place comes the smell of ripe apples, wet stone, and the smoke of distant hearths. It is a season of reflection, fitting, given how much the kingdom has changed. The Grand Circle's meetings now include farmers, engineers, and the occasional travelling philosopher. The Hall of Becoming is busier than ever, no longer a curiosity, but a community centre of sorts. Each day, people arrive not to be judged but to be heard, to claim names, release burdens, or simply sit in silence beside someone else doing the same. Monarch Thea continues her work with the steady resolve of someone who understands both the necessity of change and the cost of leading it. She no longer surprises the realm. Instead, she shapes it with deliberate daily gestures, signing decrees that allow all citizens to identify freely on legal documents, allocating royal funds to rural schools and gender-inclusive healing houses, dissolving obsolete noble privileges in favour of merit-based appointments. There's backlash, of course. A group of old guard nobles stages a protest by wearing blindfolds to a council session, declaring they refuse to see the erosion of the realm. Thea thanks them for their honesty, and immediately proposes a bill requiring all High Council members to undergo yearly civic service training. The motion passes. Quietly, the blindfolds come off. Meanwhile, the kingdom itself has begun to adapt in ways even Thea hadn't predicted. Fashion shifts. Tailors now produce robes that flow and morph, designed without assigned genders, favouring movement over tradition. Language evolves too. In certain regions, new pronouns emerge and schools teach them alongside the old, not in opposition, but as expansion. The arts blossom. Theatres, long trapped in binary roles, now stage plays where characters are defined not by gender, but by choices. The royal bard composes a song called The Crown That Walked, chronicling Thea's life. It spreads like wildfire. Children sing it in courtyards, replacing lines with their own dreams. I'll be a chef and a guard and a queen with a sword. Still, not all is easy. One chilly afternoon, word arrives of a border town in the southeast refusing to implement the new civil identity registry. The mayor, a crusty war veteran named Dren Baylor, declares it moral erosion and locks the registry building, burning the documents in the town square. A group of locals cheers, but others, especially the youth, protest. Thea does not respond with force. Instead, she travels there herself. It is her first unscheduled visit in months. She rides in plain clothes, no banners, accompanied only by Kessa and Loon. The road is long, the weather damp, the reception frosty. Dren Baylor meets her in the town hall, arms crossed, jaw set like iron. "I don't recognise your rule," he growls. "Then recognise my presence," Thea replies calm. He doesn't move. Thea walks past him and addresses the townspeople directly. She speaks in the market, not in the hall. She reads the names of those denied their identities, not in shaming, but in mourning. She then tells her story, not in lofty metaphor, but plain words, of being told who she was, of choosing otherwise, of surviving the silence that followed. "I am not here to force change," she says. "I am here to show that it's already happened." She leaves at dusk. Within days, half the town's youth begin travelling to the nearest city to register themselves voluntarily. Dren never speaks to her again, but weeks later, the town's next shipment of goods includes a carved wood plaque bearing the old crest, crossed with a tree sapling. Back in the capital, the approach of winter looms. This year, Thea decides to revive a nearly forgotten ritual. The winter braid, an old ceremony where the ruler weaves together 3 cords, one from the land, one from the people, one from themselves, symbolising unity. It hasn't been practised in generations. Preparations begin in earnest. The royal gardeners grow late-season flax for the people's cord. Farmers donate seed from their strongest harvests for the land's strand. And for her own, Thea cuts a strip from the tunic she wore at the Mirror Fortress. The ritual is set for the longest night of the year. A great bonfire is built in the centre of the capital square. The city gathers, tens of thousands, wrapped in cloaks and scarves, faces glowing with anticipation. As the moon reaches its peak, Thea steps forward, holding the 3 cords. She speaks softly, but the hush is total. This braid is not tradition reborn. It is choice made visible. Not because I must, but because we may. She begins the weave. With each pass she names a truth. For the ones who said no and meant it. For the ones who said yes and were punished. For the ones who never got to speak at all. When the braid is complete, she binds it around the Tree of Records, Verdancia's ancient archive tree, whose trunk now bears carvings from every region of the kingdom. The crowd exhales as one. Later that night, back in her chambers, she finds another note. No token this time, just parchment, folded twice. It reads, "The mirror does not oppose. It reflects what we ignore. You have taught it to reflect hope. No name." But she recognizes the handwriting. The Mirror Man. His last message, perhaps, or the first in a new conversation. The days grow colder. Snow begins to fall. One morning, Thea walks the Hall of Becoming alone. She lights the central lantern, breath visible in the chill air. Around her, offerings sit on stone shelves. Drawings, prayers, tokens, and letters. Some are joyful, others broken. Each one is real, each one is someone. She doesn't need prophecy anymore, she has people. Their stories stitched together are the fabric of her rule. Not her titles, not her lineage, just her choices, and theirs. Verdancia is no longer what it was, it is what it is becoming. Winter tightens its grip on Verdancia with delicate authority. Snow drapes the palace like lace spun by moonlight, softening stone and silencing footsteps. The rivers slow to murmurs, and the trees bow under the weight of memory. And still, the kingdom moves. Beneath the frost, reforms continue to root themselves into the bones of the realm. The Grand Circle expands. 3 new seats added for delegates from outlying archipelagos and nomadic herders, communities once seen as peripheral to Verdancia's identity. No longer. Thea insists every voice be heard, no matter how far-flung. The border walls are quiet too. The last pockets of Shard Order insurgents have either scattered or surrendered, their ideology unmoored by a kingdom that no longer fits their targets. The Order's name is still muttered in backroom taverns, but now it holds no more weight than old ghost stories. Yet not all threats are foreign. In the second week of the new year, a royal archivist discovers something buried in the oldest records of the palace vaults. a sealed ledger containing entries from the founding days of Verdansia. The parchment is stiff with time, the ink faded to a sallow brown. The most startling entry reads, "A twin lost to silence, buried in duty, bound by the promise that one should become many." Thea pores over the ledger for hours. The handwriting is that of Queen Vespera, consort to Emdun the Mender. No one knew she kept her own records. Scholars had always credited Emdun with single-handedly founding the monarchy, sculpting it in his lone vision. But this ledger tells a different story, a collaborative effort, a shared rulership between siblings. One of them erased from formal history. Historians still argue whether the phrase, "a twin lost to silence," referred to an actual sibling or to a metaphoric duality of self. Some speculate that Verdansia's founding ruler may have transitioned, lived between forms, or rejected any role prescribed by tradition. The ledger never clarifies. Thea, however, is less concerned with academic consensus than with what it means now. She shares the discovery with the Grand Circle. The room reacts like a stone tossed into a lake. Ripples, murmurs, one voice rising. Then Verdansia was born from a between. Yes, Thea says. Thea. And it has taken us this long to remember. The decision is made to add Vespera's ledger to the Tree of Records, carved into living wood so it may never again be hidden. A replica copy is distributed to all major schools, alongside a new curriculum module titled Foundations of the Forgotten. The people respond in kind. Letters pour into the Hall of Becoming, thousands of them, each from someone claiming a piece of that silence for themselves. One reads, "I thought my story started with shame. Now I think it starts with Vespera. In one coastal town, a group of artists creates a mural spanning the entire side of a fishery warehouse. It shows two crowned figures standing not back to back but side by side, their hands intertwined, planting a tree whose roots twist into faces. Different, joyful, uncertain, growing." Thea visits it in person, gloves off, breath fogging in the salt-laced air. A child offers her a cup of spiced milk and says, "They look like you." She nods. "Maybe they are me." The child doesn't flinch. Children never do. Back at the palace, the winter braid hangs in the Tree of Records, now stiff with frost. Ice crystals cling to the threads like stars on silk. Thea watches it one evening as she walks with Loon, the historian, who now carries a small notebook at all times, filled with lines that sound suspiciously like poetry. "Do you think they'll keep telling your story the way you've told it?" he asks. "No," Thea replies, not unkindly. "And they shouldn't." He raises an eyebrow. "Stories change when they live," she continues. "I just hope they remember the questions more than the titles." He writes that down. Elsewhere, far from the palace, another change begins to stir. The Oracle of Skya, a reclusive seer living on a spire of stone in the sea, sends a message. Not on parchment, on tide. A boat arrives at the capital's dock, empty save for a glass vessel. Inside, a ribbon of water held aloft by magic twisting like a living message. When Thea touches it, the liquid forms words. The shape of the crown bends still. Follow the west wind. A child cries beneath a ruined banner. The seers of Skya speak rarely, and only when time itself shifts. Thea doesn't hesitate. She assembles a small party, Kessa, Seran the Weather Witch, and a mapmaker named Odra, whose talent for reading star paths is unmatched. They set out west, leaving the warmth of the capital behind. The journey leads them through forests half asleep and mountain trails littered with frost-bent ferns. For days, they travel without finding more than wind, until they reach the edge of a battlefield. It's not marked on any maps, not remembered in any ledger. But the ruins are there, charred stone, shattered banners bearing sigils no one recognises. And in the centre, a camp, half collapsed. A child sits beside the remains of a fire wrapped in a torn flag. They don't speak. Not at first, then, "Are you the one who forgot me?" Thea kneels. "I might be." The child's eyes are pale green, the kind that flicker like lichen under moonlight. Their hair is matted, their clothes rough spun, but something about them feels familiar, too familiar. They speak in fragments. They remember a kingdom that never let them choose, a war that erased its own beginnings, a voice that once told them, "You must become one thing, only one." Thea listens, offers them her cloak. "I don't want to be king," the child whispers, "or queen, or prince, or anything like that." Thea's smile is soft. "Good. Then you can be yourself." They travel back slowly. The child, who eventually shares the name Rin, is not royalty, not a threat, just a wound, an echo of what Verdansia used to demand from its children. But Thea knows that healing one echo can change the sound of every future. In the capital, Rin is given a place to live, tutors if they want them, and no title, just space. It is the most radical act yet. Later that winter, as the kingdom prepares for the Festival of New Moons, a time to reflect on the past year and wish for the next, Thea stands alone beneath the lantern strung through the orchard. Snow falls, a hush settles. She whispers her wish aloud. May they never have to ask permission to be real. A bell rings in the distance, one note, clear, certain. And then the wind rises, not cold, but clean. The cold lingers into early spring, refusing to surrender without a slow, elegant battle. In the capital, the thaw begins not with warmth, but with sound. Birdsong slicing through frozen silence, the laughter of children cracking against ice, and most curiously the music of travelling bards, whose return signals more than seasonal change. Word has spread far beyond Verdansia's borders about the monarch who defied titles, rewritten rights, and bent the weight of tradition into something softer, more supple, more real. Other lands are listening now, but it isn't emissaries who arrive first, it's the bards. The first is a woman with blue ink across her knuckles, each finger bearing a word, "Tell me what was." She sings in markets and taverns, never asking for coin, just stories. She compiles them into a chant ballad titled The Crownless Prince. The lyrics shift depending on the singer, but the core remains. Once was a boy in a tower of silk, raised on lies and lily milk. They dressed him fine, they taught him grace, but truth was written in his face. So he tore the veil and broke the dance and taught the world to take a chance. The song catches fire. Within a week, other bards arrive. Some from Avedrin, others from the desert tribes, even one from the mysterious floating city of Ankra Vale, whose people rarely descend. Each brings a version of the tale, not always accurate, but always vibrant. They gather in the capital for the first ever symposium of scribes, hosted in the refurbished ruins of the Royal Conservatory. The symposium isn't a formal event. There are no judges, no scrolls of invitation. Anyone may perform, anyone may listen. Thea attends in disguise, her hair wrapped, her face bare of paint or crest. She sits in the back row beside a baker, a smith, and a child who wears a wooden crown and a paper sword. None of them know her. All of them love the story. One performance stands out, a young bard named Eloy, who doesn't sing but recites in prose. His voice cracks. He forgets lines. But the final verse stills the room. What is a crown, if not permission? What is a throne, if not a chair to listen? What is a ruler, if not the question, who will love this world enough to change it? Silence follows, then applause, not thunderous but genuine, like the rustle of wind through orchard leaves. That night, Thea walks the empty streets of the capital, cloak drawn tight, boots pressing softly into thawing cobblestones. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. The story is no longer hers, and that is the greatest victory. But as stories spread, so too do fears. Old kingdoms hear the songs and tremble, not with admiration, but with dread. A court in the East passes a law banning ideological theatre, clearly aimed at songs like The Crownless Prince. In the far south, a minor duke declares that any mention of Thea's reforms will be punished with exile. Even in Verdansia, a few nobles begin to grumble louder, emboldened by foreign reaction. In response, Thea hosts a public reading of all the letters sent to the Hall of Becoming over the past year. The letters are read not by her but by citizens from across the realm, each chosen at random. A young mother reads, "My daughter wears pants now, and she climbs trees. I didn't know she could smile that wide." An elderly farmer reads, "I changed my name at 74. My hands are the same. My name is not. I feel younger now." A boy barely old enough to speak says, "I have two names. Both are me." It is not a battle cry. It is a balm. In the days that follow, the grumbling softens again. But another voice rises, the Mirror Man. Not in person, not in shadow, but in song. One morning, a new ballad appears, origin unknown but hummed simultaneously in 5 separate towns. It's eerie in its consistency. One crown split the sky, one truth too bright to lie. But what of the second voice? What if we never had a choice? No one claims authorship, theories abound. Some say it's a re-emergence of Shard sympathisers. Others think it's the seer of the Mirror Fortress speaking through the wind. A few insist it's Thea herself testing the public's imagination. Thea smiles at the last one, but she takes the phenomenon seriously. In response, she hosts the kingdom's first night of questions, a dusk-to-dawn gathering where no statements are made, only questions asked. Citizens submit them in advance, and they are read aloud one by one. Some are silly, some are sharp, some are too real to laugh at. What if the prophecy was wrong? What if the Mirror Man is a part of you? What if the kingdom is just pretending to understand? What happens if you leave? That last one sticks. She answers none of them directly. That's not the point. But by the end of the night, something shifts. The kingdom no longer fears questions. They crave them. Meanwhile, Verdancia's neighbours begin to change too. Avedrin appoints a council of fluid advisors for issues related to governance and identity. The Frostborn clans officially recognise 3 new rites of passage. Even the coastal cities of Morenia, long thought conservative and closed, send an envoy bearing a simple gift, a blank book bound in blue linen. No name, the envoy says, so it can be yours, or theirs. Thea accepts it with a nod. One evening, as lanterns sway in the wind, and the orchard trees begin to bud again, Rin, now 2 inches taller, a little bolder, approaches her chambers holding the blue book. "Can I write in it?" they ask. "Only if you promise not to write what I'd write." Rin grins. "I promise." Their first entry is short. Verdancia is not just a place, it's a chance. Later that week, Tia receives a note from Queen Rasha of Avedrin. "You've started a storm. I'm just here to make sure it rains everywhere." It's the kind of alliance forged not in treaties, but in echoes. That spring, the bards return to the capital again, this time not to perform but to listen. They gather in the orchard circle under trees heavy with white blossoms and wait. Thea appears only at dusk, wearing no crown, her tunic dusted with petals. She says nothing at first. Then she begins to sing, not loudly, not perfectly, but honestly. The song has no name, no rhythm. It is a melody woven from half-remembered lullabies, desert winds, frost shivers and dreams, and when it ends the bards do not applaud, they just hum the last note and carry it. The year stretches forward, full of dew-wet mornings and thunder-thick afternoons. Verdancia breathes into its new skin, no longer startled by change, but shaped by it. The palace no longer towers with the intimidating glare of authority. It has become porous. People move in and out freely, not as intruders, but as participants. The walls still stand, but the gates rarely close. Yet even in a kingdom steadily redefining itself, there are battles left to fight. Word arrives from the northern region of Branth, a remote mountainous province nestled against the spine of the Frostborn Range. Children have gone missing, not in 2s or 3s, but dozens over the past season. The townsfolk whisper of the Collectors, a shadow group snatching those deemed improper, odd, or disruptive. No bodies, no ransoms, only silence and snow. The news hits the palace like a cold slap. Thea is in the middle of reviewing a new education bill when the report lands on her desk. She doesn't pause. She rises, calls for Kessa and orders immediate mobilization. This time she doesn't send scouts. She goes herself. Within a day, a caravan departs. A lean unit of guards, Lune the historian, Odra the Starpath cartographer, and Rin, who insists, quietly, firmly, on coming too. Because it's always people like me they try to take. Thea doesn't argue. The journey north is cruel. Cold seeps into bones like betrayal. They sleep in shifts, boots never fully dry, meals always warm but never enough. And still, they press on. They reach the village of Den Hallow after 11 days, where the people speak in hushed tones and eye the sky like it might fall. The innkeeper won't say much, but a baker, eyes swollen with grief, leans across her counter and whispers, "They take the ones who don't fit right. Not just children. Anyone soft." Thea understands instantly. It's not just about bodies. It's about identities. The pattern begins to reveal itself. Every missing person had at some point challenged the status quo. A girl who dressed as a knight, a boy who sang in soprano, an elder who changed their name after 60 years. They weren't running. They were taken. That night, Thea sits beneath a stone archway and stares into the fire. Around her, her companions sleep fitfully. Only Rin remains awake, poking at embers. "They came to my village once," Rin says, voice low, "before you found me." Thea waits. "They told my parents I'd been marked by confusion, that they had a place for me, safe, structured. My father almost agreed." "What changed?" Thea asks. "My mother said no." A pause. "She vanished the next week." Thea closes her eyes. The fire snaps. By morning, a plan forms. With Odra's help, they map the disappearances across the Branth region, triangulating a pattern between the furthest sites. A cold crescent, bending toward a narrow valley known in old texts as the Mirror Throat, a narrow passage of rock and ice that legend claimed led nowhere but echoes. They ride out. As they reach the throat, the wind begins to speak. It howls, not with randomness, but rhythm. A low, droning thrum that turns words sideways in the ear. Odra murmurs something about auditory illusions, but Saran tightens her cloak and mutters, "No illusion sings like that." They enter the gorge single file. The stone walls close in. Snow turns to ice, and then, without warning, the sound stops. So does the world. It takes them a full hour to realize they're not alone. The fortress is carved into the mountainside, camouflaged to the eye. A door of seamless obsidian opens as if sensing their presence. Inside, silence. Not the soft hush of reverence, the dead quiet of suppression. They move carefully through the corridors, no signs of violence, just emptiness. And then, behind a locked iron gate, they find them. Children, adults, dozens, alive, but subdued. Eyes dull, shoulders slumped. Each wears the same grey robe, the same iron bracelet. Kessa picks the lock in seconds. The captives blink in confusion. Some whisper names, others only cry. Then comes the sound. Boots, not many, but enough. The collectors appear with the calm menace of people who believe they're right. Their robes bear no symbols, just white sterilized cloth. Their leader, a gaunt figure with ice-coloured eyes, steps forward. "You trespass." "You abduct," Thea replies. "These are not abductions, they are rescues." Thea's hand rests lightly on her blade. The figure smiles. They are given peace, structure, roles. You, on the other hand, offer them chaos. Kessar steps forward. She offers them choice. The collectors don't draw weapons. They raise hands, palms glowing with containment magic. But before the spell can form, Saran slams her staff into the floor. Lightning splits the air. A ward shatters. Chaos erupts. It is not a clean battle. The collectors fight without blood, binding with runes and shadows. But Thea's group fights with something stronger. Rage. Memory. Love. Rin is the one who frees the last captives, breaking the spell sigils with the necklace they've worn since the day Thea found them. It flares once. Then silence breaks. The captives awaken, and they rise. By the time it's over, the collectors are bound, the captives wrapped in cloaks, and the fortress beginning to crack from a fault in the stone that Saran assures no one she caused, though she smiles faintly. They return to Verdancia not as survivors, but as an army of truths. Thea walks into the capital at the head of a procession of over 50 former captives, each bearing a torch. No parade, just presence. The kingdom watches. And something clicks. Not just sympathy, recognition, a memory of who they once were, or who they could have been. In the days that follow, the Mirror Throat is sealed. A memorial is erected, not of marble, but of reflective glass, so that everyone who visits sees not just names, but their own face. Rin writes the inscription, "We are not broken. We were stolen. Now we write the next line." Thea doesn't speak at the unveiling. She doesn't need to. That evening, back in the orchard, she receives a final gift, a package. No note. Inside, a mirror, framed in wood, wrapped in ribbon. Its surface ripples faintly. She hangs it in the Hall of Becoming. It doesn't reflect the room. It reflects possibility. The kingdom stirs beneath the weight of its own transformation. In the hush between seasons, when the last frost has yet to surrender but the first buds begin their hesitant rise, Verdansia seems to hold its breath, not in fear, but in expectation. Everything has changed. Not all at once, not without scars, but undeniably. The streets no longer echo only with the songs of bards or the clatter of merchants. Now one hears conversations once whispered in corners being spoken openly in bakeries, between customers at the tailors, even in temples. Children debate what to call themselves, what to wear, how to move, not as rebellion but as practice. The question isn't who are you anymore, it's who are you becoming. Monarch Thea walks these streets often, sometimes in disguise, sometimes not. These days fewer people bow. Instead they nod. Some smile. One elderly woman once pressed a warm tart into her hand without a word, as if to say, "We're still watching, and we're still with you." Her power now lies not in her ability to command, but in her willingness to be seen. Not as an ideal, but as an unfolding. And Verdansia follows suit. In the town of Severon, a library once closed for moral disarray reopens as the House of Voices. It offers free classes in public speaking, creative writing, and dream interpretation. The first lesson isn't grammar, it's silence, the power of being listened to. In the mountain settlement of Corrin's Edge, long famous for its stoic swordmasters, a new school opens for those who fight in non-traditional forms. Bladed fans, dancing blades, and rhythm-based combat all find a home. The founder, once exiled for frivolous performance, writes to Thea, "Thank you for giving us space to twirl." Meanwhile, the Grand Circle prepares for its next era. Term limits are introduced, rotating seats. A travelling satellite council is formed, meaning not all deliberation will happen in the capital anymore. Power, Thea insists, must not centralise, it must circulate. Flowing like water, not stacking like stone. The nobles, many of whom once fought her every step, have largely adapted. Some have even flourished. Those who embraced the reforms early now serve as mentors, helping others navigate what it means to rule through relevance, not ritual. And yet, even now, old shadows linger. In a quiet village near the eastern border, graffiti appears on a temple wall. It reads, "Truth is not the same as good." It's a chilling phrase, not angry, just cold. The next morning someone else has painted over it, "No, but truth is the beginning." The two lines are preserved, not scrubbed away. They become part of the wall, an accidental monument to the tension of change. Thea visits it personally. She stares at the wall for a long time. Then she adds a third line, scratched into the stone with her ring. "Good grows where truth is watered." Elsewhere, the Mirror Man resurfaces, not in body, not even in magic, but in rumour. A merchant in the West claims to have heard a new story, of a ruler who never existed, but whose name brings peace when whispered into fire. A child in the North says a tall, soft-spoken figure appeared in their dreams asking, "What colour is your silence?" A painting circulates, unsigned, drifting from inn to inn. It shows Thea not as she is, but as a shape shifting in smoke, eyes closed, arms open. She doesn't know what to make of it, only that the myth is still being written. Rin continues to grow. They train now in swordplay and stargazing. They've taken to wearing half-capes and painting their boots with chalk each morning, insisting that identity begins at the feet. They also teach. Each week in the Hall of Becoming they host circles of names, where people of any age may come and try out new titles, pronouns, or even voices. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it ends in laughter. Once someone chose to be called only Hush, and sat smiling for an hour while others tried it aloud. Thea watches from a distance. She does not lead these sessions. She simply tends the fire. In the wider world, other monarchs begin to reach out, not with suspicion, but with questions. The skybound courts of Ankra Vale send a scholar to study the Hall of Becoming. The woven clans of the Red Plains propose a cultural exchange of storytelling rituals. Even the once hostile river kingdoms open a quiet embassy. Verdansia, once a realm caught between past and progress, now leads with neither. It leads with curiosity. And beneath it all, a new ritual takes shape. It begins with one teacher in one village, who asks their students not to pledge allegiance at the start of class, but to say aloud something true about themselves. The idea spreads. Within months, schools across the realm begin each morning not with commands, but confessions. I'm scared of thunder. I want to grow wings. I miss my grandmother. I feel brave today. Truth as ritual, not doctrine, not dogma, just presence. In late spring, the royal garden, long tended in silence, is open to the public. Thea kneels beside her people, planting onions and bluebells, laughing when she unearths a root shaped like a griffin. One child asks, "Do rulers really get dirt on their knees?" Thea replies, "Only the ones worth following." That night, beneath a canopy of stars, she walks the orchard paths alone. The air smells of mint and ash, of growth and what came before. She finds herself beneath the sycamore again, the one with her mother's initials carved long ago. But there's something new now, a second carving added beneath the first, T of B. She smiles. The B could stand for anything: boy, becoming, beyond. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the tree holds both. Before heading in, she stops by the Hall of Becoming one last time for the night. She checks the offering shelf, tidies a stack of folded letters, and lights a small candle at the base of the mirror installed not long ago, the one that doesn't reflect the room. It ripples, and this time it shows her not as she is, but as she was. The child in silk, the boy in shadow, the princess in boots, the monarch in starlight, and at last, simply, herself. She whispers, "Thank you." Not to the mirror, to all the versions that led her here. Late spring blurs into early summer, and Vedancia pulses with a rhythm that feels at last its own, no longer reactive, no longer under siege. It breathes now. And in that breath is something more precious than even peace: continuity. The capital hums not with grandeur, but with purpose. New apprenticeships bloom in unlikely places. At the edge of the city, a forge once used only by noble armourers now trains artists in molten glass. The Royal Library, long viewed as a place of dust and duty, hosts weekly story gatherings for children. Even the palace kitchens have transformed, no longer silent, anxious corridors of etiquette, but riotous, fragrant hubs where sourdoughs rise beside sweetbreads shaped like seahorses. Monarch Thea moves among these places with quiet regularity, checking in, planting questions, listening for answers. They've begun to shed the final remnants of their old regalia. No more sashes, no more tailored cloaks of dyed lineage. Now they wear what's needed: linen when it's hot, oilskin when it rains, laughter when it's called for, silence when it isn't. But with growth comes messiness, and the reforms now dig into the deeper strata of tradition, ones that aren't just ritual but reflex. The Temple of the Ember Path, one of the oldest religious orders in Vedancia, sends a formal petition. Its leaders express concern, not anger, but confusion. Their texts, ancient and interpreted through centuries of patriarchal framing, have no language for a ruler like Thea. They request clarity, fearing spiritual chaos among their congregants. Thea does not dismiss them. Instead, they invite the temple leaders to the palace, not for debate but for story. They meet in the dawn room, a small chamber lined with amber light. The monarch tells their tale plainly. No metaphors, no performance. They speak not of prophecy, but of mornings, of waking each day unsure and learning to walk anyway. When they finish, the high ember priestess, a stooped woman with ink-black eyes, says only, "There is a line in our book, long ignored. Divinity dwells in the middle of the fire where no shape survives unchanged." I had forgotten that line. The petition is withdrawn, and a week later the Temple of the Ember Path issues a new blessing, one written in Thea's name, but designed for anyone living beyond the strictures of tradition. It ends with, "May your becoming never be still." Outside the palace, similar awakenings unfold. In the western port city of Vera, a guild of former corsairs turned fisherfolk design a new naval flag. A compass rose surrounded by shifting waves. No centre, just motion. When asked why, the guild leader says, "We don't want to sail toward the past anymore. In the Central Plains, farmers vote to restructure their stewardship councils, giving equal weight to landowners, seasonal workers, and children over the age of 10. Because if they can plough, they can speak," one councillor says. And in the desert realm of Asheri, Queen Sira sends a gift. A sand glass made of fused quartz, engraved with twin trees, one rooted downward, one upward, their branches intertwining in a mirror spiral. The note reads, even our shadows bloom now. Back in Verdansia, the Grand Circle holds its most ambitious session yet, a full revision of the inheritance codes. For centuries, land, titles and wealth passed through bloodlines, often disproportionately favouring sons and elder heirs. Now the Circle proposes a system that favours chosen stewardship, gifting power not to the expected, but to the willing and worthy. The proposal faces fierce debate. One noble shouts, "You would erase our legacy." Another responds, "No, we would offer it forward." In the end, the motion passes. With it, the very idea of legacy shifts. Now any citizen may designate their inheritor. Bonds of mentorship, found family or community ties carry equal legal weight to blood. Inheritance becomes less about lineage and more about intention. One child in the foothills designates their great-aunt as heir to their grove of beeches. "She taught me how to listen to trees," they write. A palace cook names a former apprentice because they burned the roast once and never lied about it. Even within the royal line, changes emerge. Though Thea has never formally named a successor, rumours abound. Rin, now in their mid-teens, leads weekly philosophy salons and has developed a quiet, commanding presence. They speak rarely, but when they do, people lean in. Still, Thea makes no declarations. Instead, they leave a blank ledger in the Hall of Becoming labelled only "Those Who Choose." Visitors fill it with names, not just of people, but of values, places, ideas. One page reads, "Courage, mercy, the orchard at dusk, anyone who says, 'I don't know,' and means it." Elsewhere, another subtle but profound change takes root. Language. The Academy of Tongues, once a rigid institution of grammar and diction, formally recognises a new form of address. Ren, short for Renaissance, to be used for those who choose to step beyond gendered titles. The proposal comes not from scholars, but from street poets. Thea is the first to accept it formally. Their title becomes Ren Monarch Tia of Verdansia. Some still call them Monarch, some simply Thea, but Ren begins to spread like seed on wind. One city adopts it in schools, another includes it on census rolls. A young singer writes a ballad titled The First Wren, and it becomes a favourite lullaby. As language bends, so does perception. People start seeing each other differently, less by what they appear to be, more by what they choose to reach toward. And yet, even in this slow flourishing, Thea knows there's more to do. Systems to watch, traditions to question, pain still buried in corners, but for the first time they don't feel like they're holding the realm up on their shoulders. They feel like they're holding hands. One afternoon, during a public open court, a traveller from a distant valley asks, "How do you know what's right, Ren Thea?" Thea doesn't answer right away. Then, "I don't. I just ask myself each day, what will leave the most room for others to breathe?" The traveller nods, and the crowd, rather than applauding, simply breathes with them. The winds of summer shift. No longer timid or gentle, they arrive bold, fragrant with honeysuckle, salt from distant harbours, and the earthy spice of new construction. All across Verdansia, the sounds of renewal mingle. Hammer strikes, laughter, the rustle of scrolls, the cadence of fresh ideas stepping into old spaces. Monarch Thea, or Ren Thea, as they are now more widely called, no longer lives in the uppermost chambers of the palace. They've relocated to a suite of rooms that once served as guest quarters for minor dignitaries, sunlit, modest, book-filled, and always unlocked. Their balcony overlooks the Hall of Becoming, and each morning begins not with decrees but with a walk down its steps, greeting whoever might be arriving at dawn, visitors with trembling truths or declarations of quiet joy. But beyond the palace walls, movement stirs that is both new and familiar. Former enemies send emissaries. It begins subtly. A sealed scroll arrives from the dominion of Threx, long known for its iron-fisted rule and aversion to anything seen as subversive. The message is simple. We request dialogue. Our people have begun to question. Thea responds immediately. She invites not only a delegation, but also opens space for their younger citizens to visit first. A diplomatic reversal that sends ripples across the continent. The first Threxan visitors are not generals or high clerics, but students. They tour Verdansia's schools, visit the mirror at the hall, sit in on Grand Circle sessions, and, most significantly, attend a storytelling night led by Rin. That night the candlelight in the orchard flickers against soft expressions and widened eyes. The students don't speak much at first. but one eventually raises a hand. "My mother says people like you broke our country," Rin smiles, not mockingly, gently. "Maybe we did," they reply. "Or maybe we're still breaking things that needed to crack a long time ago." The child doesn't ask another question, but stays after the gathering, watching as candles are snuffed out one by one. Weeks later, Threx formally agrees to exchange ambassadors. Other realms follow. The floating city-state of Kaelyra, long mysterious and reclusive, sends its first ever envoy to Verdantia. They bring an offering of sky ribbons, ethereal strands that shimmer with changing colour, based on the bearer's mood. The Kaelyrans explain that these are worn to make invisible emotions visible, not to shame them, but to affirm them. Thea introduces them into Verdantia's diplomatic functions at once. Queen Rasha of Avedrin visits again, not for strategy or pageantry, but for bread and conversation. She and Tia walk the orchard barefoot, and when she leaves, she scrawls a note into the public journal left in the Hall of Becoming. "Verdantia, you've grown sweeter, keep fermenting." There's laughter, but also reflection. Not all former rivals arrive with open hearts. From the frost-ridden dominion of Ilstra comes a challenging presence, Varn Hest, an advisor known for his sharp logic and colder tongue. He attends a grand circle session, listens to public testimonies, and then addresses Thea directly. "You've built your reign on softness," he says. "How long do you expect it to hold against the steel of history?" Thea's answer comes not as a rebuttal, but a question. What if softness is what shapes steel? The chamber falls quiet. Then, as if responding to some invisible signal, a child near the back rises and adds, "And what if we don't want to be steel anymore?" The next day, Varn Hest does not return to the formal discussions. Instead, he is spotted in the city's archive halls reading scrolls of local poetry. Another invitation follows, not from a nation, but a coalition of displaced peoples. The riverless, the rootless, those once driven from Verdantia's borders or denied homes by older laws. They write, "Now that the realm has grown, is there space for those who once stood outside its walls?" Thea does not answer with a statement. She answers with a procession. She personally leads the welcoming march. From the southern gates of the capital they walk, hour by hour, joined by townsfolk, artisans, guards and strangers. By the time they reach the palace, the roads are carpeted in petals, and no one is turned away. Homes are designated, land is redistributed. More importantly, citizenship is redefined, no longer tied to blood but to commitment. Anyone who chooses to help build the kingdom belongs. Not everyone agrees. A group of former nobles, now citizens without inherited titles, protest outside the Hall of Becoming, shouting, "This kingdom no longer knows its own name." Thea walks into the crowd. She says nothing. She stands. Then she takes a chalk stone and writes a single phrase on the steps. "We never did. Now we're learning together." The protest disperses by dusk. Meanwhile, innovations flourish. The skyglass lanterns introduced by the Kaelyrans become common along city streets. A new form of folk dancing emerges, combining desert footwork, highland turns, and frostborn handspins. The language used in law and poetry evolves further. Gender-neutral pronouns now sit comfortably beside poetic ones like Zephyr, Ember and Bramble, used when words alone feel too small. Rin, now something between a symbol and a sage, begins teaching unlearning classes in the orchard. These aren't lectures, they are guided silence. Participants lie in the grass and simply exist, letting their identities rest without being questioned or explained. When asked what the purpose is, Rin shrugs and says, "To stop carrying things that were never ours." Even former critics begin to see the shift not as threat but possibility. One archscribe writes, "This is not erasure. This is compost, and the harvest is coming." One by one, nations that once feared Verdantia's transformation begin to send their youth, their questions, their art. And Verdantia becomes not a symbol, but a catalyst. Still, Thea knows the work is never finished. Each day brings another note to the hall, sometimes joyful, sometimes aching. One reads, "I am trying to find myself in a place that keeps changing. Thank you for not stopping." Another simply says, "You showed me my reflection before I even knew I had a face." And at night, when the city finally sleeps, Thea sometimes walks alone through the orchard, barefoot, cloak trailing dew. They speak aloud, not to spirits, but to memory, to the boy in silk, to the princess in boots, to the monarch in mirrors, to the self that dared to ask again and again, what if? And now, under stars unafraid to sparkle, they whisper back, what if, indeed? The final days of summer arrive not with thunder or spectacle, but with softness. The sun lingers longer in the sky, as though reluctant to dip below Verdancia's blooming hills. The air smells of ripe pears, parchment ink, and the faint iron tang of river mist. It is a season not of climax, but culmination. Monarch Thea wakes early each morning, not from duty, but habit. Their life, once structured around balancing secrets and symbols, now moves by a rhythm both gentle and strong, like the tide pulling against polished stones. There are fewer emergencies now, fewer threats cloaked in shadow or silver tokens. But the work of building, true building, never stops. And so, they rise. Each day begins with a walk through the orchard where it all began. The trees bend slightly now, heavier with fruit, and beneath them people gather. Not followers, not petitioners, just people, reading, weaving, debating quietly over card games and questions like, what shape is a promise? It has been 3 years since Thea stood before the world and chose to become more than a role. Now, Verdancia is something else entirely. No longer ruled by blood or binaries, its power flows horizontally, through the grand circle, through community forums, through the growing network of public halls where stories and decisions are shaped side by side. Even the map of the realm looks different now. Borders soften to reflect cultural ties, not conquest lines. Language is more expansive, governance more experimental. Mistakes still happen. But they are met with reflection, not retribution. One morning a delegation from a faraway archipelago arrives. Curious always. Their leader, an old sailor with eyes like cracked glass, asks only one question. How did you do it? Thea does not offer a lecture. Instead, they guide the visitor to the Hall of Becoming. They open the door and let them listen. Inside, a young miner reads aloud a poem about loving their own reflection for the first time. A veteran recounts the day they stopped hiding their tenderness. A child declares that their new name is Comet. The archipelago leader listens and weeps. That night, over wine and soft breads, they say to Thea, I thought you'd give me a doctrine, but you gave me people. Thea replies, people are the doctrine. The harvest festival arrives in golden waves. Fields across the realm glitter with ripened grain, sunlit squash, grapes swelling in low clusters. There is music in every village, dances without choreography, bonfires sparked by love, not necessity. In some places, they sing the crownless prince. In others, they make up songs on the spot. No script, no centre. In the capital, the palace gates stay wide open for the entire week. Children run barefoot through the inner courts. A group of poets strings ribbons from tower to tower, each bearing a word gifted by a passerby. Kindling, becoming, wind, United States. Thea walks these paths slowly, quietly. They pass through a mural being painted on the palace's eastern wall. A slow, collaborative effort that began as graffiti and was claimed by Joy. It depicts no single person, no monarch, no myth. Only hands, open and reaching, layered upon one another like petals on a flower. When Thea reaches the orchard, they find Rin waiting beneath the sycamore. The tree has changed, taller now, the bark more gnarled, but the carvings remain. LR still visible. T of B deeper now, and next to it, new letters, Rin, and no second word. What comes next? Thea asks. Rin shrugs. I haven't decided yet. They sit together in silence. Around them, dusk lowers the light gently, like a lantern being dimmed. Later, in the Hall of Becoming, Thea climbs the stairs to the highest alcove, the one left empty all these years, as a reminder that some stories were still being written. They step inside, they close the door. Then, on the back wall, they carve one final line. I was not supposed to be real, but I am, and so are you. Outside, the kingdom hums. People laugh and sleep and make mistakes. They get names wrong, then get them right. They change their clothes, their minds, their loves. They speak, they stumble, they stay. Verdancia is no longer ruled by certainty. It is ruled by care, by memory and revision, by a monarch who began as a boy, became a princess, and then chose to be neither. They are not a symbol, They are not a mystery, they are a person. And now their work is nearly done. Wind down, 300 words. The stars come out gently over Verdansia, like scattered rice across midnight velvet. No trumpets announce them. No scrolls proclaim their presence. They just arrive, quiet and steady, reminding the world how light persists, even when small, even when unseen. Inside the palace, the lights dim slowly. Candles flicker, not with drama, but with rhythm. Guards lean against archways, their duties softened into watchfulness. In the city, windows shutter one by one, and laughter turns to lullabies. Thea stands on the balcony, the orchard below sighing in sleep. The cool air kisses their face. Their breath moves with the breeze. It's not quite peace, but it's close. They think about the path that led here. Not a straight one, not even a clean one, but a true one, stitched from courage and contradiction, carried by questions and held together by the hands of a kingdom willing to change. They smile, and in that moment everything softens. The titles, the mirrors, the weight. Tomorrow the kingdom will wake again, with new challenges, new names, new declarations whispered at sunrise. But tonight it rests, as all becoming must, as all truth deserves. And maybe, somewhere out there, a child wraps themselves in both a blanket and a question, wondering who they might be. And in the silence that follows, the land whispers back, "You will be beautiful, and enough."